Hello everyone. In this video, I will be briefing about FIN5203-2W2DIS, which is an infographic we are going to create. In last few months, most of you worked on the same concept, but you people confused in understanding the task. In this task, we are supposed to understand what is compound interest factor table that is given in the textbook and how that factor interest table, a compound interest factor table will be useful in calculations that are mentioned in chapter 2 to chapter 4. So from chapter 2 to chapter 4 in the textbook, there are different concepts, different calculations related concepts that are mentioned in the textbook. You are supposed to understand what calculations are performed, and while performing those calculations, how compound interest factor table is helpful. So compound interest factor tables are given at the end of the textbook like this. Okay, so these tables are useful in calculating factor values that are used in the calculation part. Say, for example, in chapter 2, 2.1, there is a term called single payment compound amount factor. So, this I want to calculate for the purpose of calculating compound amount. Okay, simple single payment compound amount. If I want to calculate that, so I will be using a formula like this, and calculating this value is always complex when we have I and n. So in such situations, what happens is I can straight away. So for example, here it is given maybe 25% is the interest rate, and n is equal to 3 if you take. So then I will take this 25% interest rate table, and when n is equal to 3 and I am calculating single payment, this is the factor value that I can take. So rather than using the mathematical equation and continuing calculating about it, it is very simple that we can go to the table and we can pick the value and we can use it to perform the calculation. So that is purpose of the compound interest factor table. Okay. It provides accurate value and it simplifies the calculation part. Need not to waste our complete time on calculating P of 1 plus I whole power n. P into 1 plus I whole power n. This is not required to be calculated. Simply we can go to compound interest factor table and we can pick value and we can use it. Okay, that is the purpose. What is like how it will be helpful? Compound interest factor table, how it does, like to calculate this, it takes a lot of time. But here, when we are picking it from the compound interest table, it reduces a lot of time for us. Okay, and the accuracy value of the value will be high. If we manually calculate, or like if we use calculators, or even if we use Excel sheet, it takes a lot of time to perform calculation on P of 1 plus I whole power n. So if you take the second value here, the equation is very big. When we go like further, and if we increase the complexity of calculations increase, and calculating factor value becomes more complex. In such situations, the factor table will be very useful. As the accuracy of the factor value is high, means exact. So then what happens is the value that we calculated will also be very accurate. In that context, what happens, whatever the calculations we will be performing, that will be accurate, and the decisions that we make based on those values will also accurate and suitable for the organization in different situations. So compound interest factor table is always helpful to perform better calculations and make better decisions, and ensures that organization make decisions that suits for them. Got my point? So now, so this is the use of compound interest table, and this is how we will be using compound interest factor table to calculate in the equations we calculate. Okay. So now how we can separate, like we can write differently. So for example, when we are writing, multiple people are working for the organization and everybody writing discussion, and how we can make difference in our writing. So what I wanted to do is from chapter 2 to chapter 4, there are different calculations that are performed in the sheet, okay, in the textbook. So you take one concept and you explain. For example, this is one concept. Here we are calculating present worth. When we are calculating present worth, how we are going to use factor table? Here P by A is taken from the factor table where we have 9 is the n value and 16% is the interest rate in that way. So And when you scroll it down, you take randomly one particular calculation related one, and you explain how the factor table is used in calculation part. So simply start writing what is a compound interest factor table and how it will be helpful, what are its benefits. So whatever I explain in your own terminology, you try to write it. Then take one example of calculation from the textbook chapter 2 to 4. And for that particular calculation, how this compound interest factor table will be useful in calculating factor, that should be present in a better way. So you explain in general, then you take a brief example, brief case of calculation part, then you give example of that one, how it will work for that particular explanation. All right. So that's it from my side, Tim. Give your best. Don't write unnecessary content. This is the actual information that we have to present on the infographic. All the best. Thank you.